Hey, everybody. Should be able to start here in about 1 minute. Hopefully everybody can see my screen. If you don't mind, if you just raise your hand and you can hear me and see the screen, that'd be helpful. Excellent. Thank you, thank you, thank you. All good. Well, we're going to go ahead and get started. So I'm Bryan Clontz, president of Charitable Solutions, here to talk about the always fun timeshares, the black hole of charitable giving. A couple things, as many of you know, quick housekeeping, we will not be sending out the slides, but we will be sending out a full recording of this early next week, as well as the Q&A. So if you can include any questions in the Q&A, we had a fair number of pretty interesting anecdotes more than questions from Tuesday's session. That'd be really helpful. And I'll combine those with Tuesdays and then send those out at the same time. Another quick thing too, you might be saying, why are you wearing a Hawaiian-ish shirt? Because we're talking about timeshares, and I went out to the pool and got the full beach ball. So probably can't see that very well, but you get the beach ball. So talking about timeshares and how many people own them and how many of them are trying to, I won't say dump, but I will say dump. Timeshares, in terms of your clients, a lot of advisors on the call today, or charities, either during life because they're not able to find ways of disposing of them or exiting them otherwise, or more problematically through estates. So that's what we're going to be talking about here. We'll be talking about today. So quickly, a bit about our firm. I won't take too long here. Let me do this quick. There we go. So existed since January 15th, 2003, been over 20 years now, 21 years. Keep using the 20th anniversary logo because we paid a graphic artist to do that, and I want to get more than a year's worth of that investment. But our mission, literally since day one, has been to help make charitable gifts happen that otherwise wouldn't. Now, a caveat there, very important. We work with good donors, good clients, with good assets. 47 more nines % of the time, timeshare is not a good asset. I sort of led with that in terms of the black hole of charitable giving, wanting to do good things. So the point is that most of what we do are for working with donors who have otherwise gone to their favorite charity or charities, and for whatever reason, that charity is not able to take in a particular gift. So we're talking about non-cash assets today, of which we receive 0 timeshares. Do not call us on timeshares. But most of these tend to be very large real estate, or about 90% of the time, private business interest gifts or other types of assets. So we do that either directly consulting to charities or through our Decami Foundation or Decami Asset Trust as 2 national donor-advised funds only taking in illiquid or complex gifts. We also are doing a lot more direct investments where a donor might have a donor-advised fund but want to do an investment of those fund assets, of the cash, into private equity positions or into real estate. So more non-traditional alternative investments, or otherwise even a publicly traded stock concentration. That's about 1/3 of our roughly $2 billion in assets now. So it's a lot of activity, relatively small number of donors, maybe 2 dozen or so, dozen and a half donors doing this. But it's a very large segment of what we've been working on the last couple of years. You can see there, since inception, we've completed over $4 billion in non-cash donations, super important here, all of which were initially declined by the charity because the charity most always is the one referring the case back to us, either because of legal issues, complexity, capacity issues with staff, just timing of being able to get it done in 2 or 3 days. Our average turn is about 3 days, just under 3 days for a business interest gift from the point of initial phone call, assuming we get due diligence documents at that time, to completion of the gift. Real estate's about 5 to 7 days, so we can move very quickly. We have a team of 27 people, and this is our sort of one-trick pony thing to be able to get these done. National gift annuity, same thing, sort of full outsourced provider for gift annuities. I need to update this. I have 800+ contracts. I think we're coming in very close to 1,000 now, so it's growing very quickly. We are in all 50 states, and 100% of the residuum is then passed back to the charity or charities that the donor, again, was trying to give to in the first place. By the way, on the non-cash side, we don't manage anything liquid. So we only take illiquid in. Once it's liquid, it's all going out. So 30 days after we receive non-cash settlement proceeds, those are being granted out again to the charity the donor was trying to give it to. Same thing for National Gift Annuity Foundation. As soon as the last annuitant passes away, 100% of that residuum is granted out. We also have got an actuary. I've had 2 actuaries on staff for a while, and do actuarial stress testing for gift annuity pools, typically larger pools, usually 5 to 10 million or more. And also had 2 cases in the last 3 weeks. One was a $10 million CGA, one was a $14 million CGA. So sometimes very large ones are not coming into us directly, but the charity wants to be able to receive them themselves. So then we're looking at risk mitigation on very large gift annuities. So whether that means reducing rate or backstop in some way, or contractual shifting, or reinsurance, and then the amount of reinsurance and design placement and so on. So all of that sort of falls in under the charitable gift annuity risk management bucket. Charitable appraisals, the first time in 20 years. 3 days ago, I had somebody ask us to do a charitable appraisal for a timeshare. And I'm like, no, so we don't do that. But our tagline is that if you can give it to charity, we can appraise it. So hopefully, if the donor is needing a qualified appraisal for a lifetime gift, or for a life income gift, or in some cases, perhaps for an estate gift, then we have a team of people. I do all of the crypto currency and the life insurance appraisals. And then we have business appraisers, precious metals, and tangible property. So again, anything that can be donated to charity, we can appraise it. Local real estate ought to be done by a local real estate appraiser, certainly. Then I created a charity 13 years ago, that does disaster relief and personal hardship grants globally. We have about 150 members on that team. It's called the Emergency Assistance Foundation. And so Charitable Solutions does direct consulting in this space. Doesn't come up a lot in the charitable aspect, but it's much more on the for-profit side. So we have got 350 funds. It's about 400 corporations now. They average about 20,000 employees each, being able to set up individual charitable funds so that it is tax deductible to the company or to the employees through payroll deduction or direct giving. And most importantly, then the grants going to disaster relief or personal hardship impacted by it within the same employee group are tax-free. And so sort of designed that again back in 2010. And then things like this. So professional advisor CE, donor CE, staff, board, nonprofits, etc. So this is us very quickly for last year in terms of decimized non-cash activity. 161 donations, 1.1 billion was not our record year. If you average that, that's about 6.8 million per donation. 100% of these were declined by referring charities. 100%. So every one of these were declined that instead were sent over. We get about 8 to 10 referrals a day on average, roughly, and about 1 roughly completes per day. So there are lots of rabbit chasing that we do. I kept real estate highlighted. We did a great session, Ryan Raffin, last month on commercial real estate. And so I kept this highlighted because this would be where timeshares would fall. 0 of these were timeshares. So we've never done a timeshare, never will do a timeshare. But we get this question constantly. So of the 8 to 10 referrals we get each day, that's roughly 40 a week-ish, probably 2 or some version of a timeshare. So it comes up a lot. And I shouldn't tell you this because I hope this is educational, but most importantly, I'm doing this to record this into our library so that when we get those 2 calls a week, we can say, great question. We just did a webinar on it. Go watch the webinar so then I don't have to spend 15 minutes every single time going through why it's horrible to take in a timeshare. There you go. There's the honest reason. Business interest, you can see it's about 90%. That's been consistent the last 4 or 5 years, almost $1 billion there, broken down. S-Corps, very much understated here because a lot of these LLCs elect to be taxed as S-Corps. So technically they're S-Corps, even though legally they're LLCs. So that'd probably be closer to 45 to 50 or so would be S-Corps. You can sort of see the rest of this too. So jumping in now, timeshares, horrible timeshares. So we're going to talk about timeshare data. I am a bit biased. You probably have picked that up a little bit, but I am really interested if you as professional advisors or as charities have ever received any of these that's actually worked out. And so I am very open to be educated. And if there are any kind of clever ways, I've known a lot of not so clever ways, but if there's some clever ways of otherwise disposing of timeshares in a charitable ecosystem or within that, I would love to know, because we're all about providing solutions, even if they're not ours. I would love to be able to point somebody to a solution. I will give you what I currently say and what the team currently says when timeshares come up. And so I don't know if it's the best sort of path, but at least it gives some options or alternatives to the donors. So we're going to talk about timeshare data, then why a charity should never accept a timeshare. Never is all capped on purpose. And then if they didn't remember number 2, that you should not have taken a timeshare, or the donor says, okay, yeah, I don't want to give the timeshare, but how can I get out? What are the exit paths? Some what I call not so clever ways of people saying, oh, I know a great way to do it. Not usually. So we'll go through that. And then there are some charities in the timeshare space that have gotten, we'll just say, super sideways with DOJ. It's not good. And so sort of go through at least one of those examples. So with that, again, any questions that come up, definitely let me know. I've learned a lot preparing for this. Not only that I have a shirt that looks kind of Hawaiian-ish, and I had to go find our stupid beach ball, but about how many timeshares exist. I was blown away. So you can see some of the data here. 8.1 billion in timeshare sales. That's gross sales. That was as of 2023. It's expected to be about 9.5 billion by 2025. So the growth rate is brisk. Huge assumption, probably wrong, but I'm assuming that correlates with the graying of the baby boomers and tropical climate vacation. I don't know, but that would seem to make sense. Just like we're seeing the same thing based on a lot of Dr. James data around charitable gift annuities, and that sort of ties in a little bit there. But bottom line is that's pretty chunky. What I found even chunkier is 10 million households own a timeshare. 10 million. So then I thought, wonder how many households there are. There are about 112 million households. So that would mean 8%. I should have put a household population of number of households. 8%. That's roughly 1 in 10. So if you're looking outside, if you guys are working in your home, or you're driving home today and you drive down your block and you drive down 10 houses, one of them has a timeshare. That's a lot. That's a lot. So the question then becomes what do they do with 10 million timeshares? And that is becoming more acute, certainly as baby boomers age and obviously pass away. Also found interesting, $24,000 average purchase price. I would have thought more like 15 to 20, but it's not too much out of that range. And then 2,500 to 3,500 average annual maintenance. So you pay for the timeshare of the 24,000 on average, and then on average, it's roughly $200 to $300 a month that you're paying for your proportional annual maintenance. Clearly, that can be much lower. Clearly, that can be much higher, but that tends to be the average range. This was funny to me. We'll see if it's funny to you. Not a lot funny about timeshares, so you got to go with what you get. And 85% of purchasers regret purchase. So when I was doing prep for this, I sort of found this maybe 3 or 4 times in terms of cited 3 or 4 different times, sort of in various sources. And I'm like, I wonder who did that study. So I dug a little bit more. 2018 study, University of Central Florida. So I live in Jacksonville, and University of Central Florida, for those of you who don't know, is in Orlando. So Orlando is the universal Milky Way galaxy epicenter of timeshares. So I found it interesting that the public major university in Orlando sort of did this study, and then I guess felt the need to publish that study. So I kind of felt like it was, Georgia Tech in Atlanta doing a massive study going, sugary drinks are not so good for people. So Coca-Cola might say, we're living in the same tent here. So I found that interesting. I also find interesting, if anybody does Google search on that, on Tuesday, somebody did, and I thought this was really funny. that about 6 months or a year after that, I can't remember, I don't know what the name of it is, but the National Association of Fractional Ownership Timeshare Group, whatever the association is, came out with their own study that said like 90% were, and the person on Tuesday said, oh, they were happy. It was like, actually, they didn't use the word happy. They used the word, I believe, was content. So then they did like a quick counter study going, oh, no. 90% of the people who've made this purchase, they were actually content. Now, content's an interesting, interesting word, but you can dig that up if you want. So those were, the one study came out and they freaked out, and then they quickly created another study. It's like the National Association of Apple Growers suggests eating apples all day long, for better health, I'm sure. So anyway, you get the gist. Now, when we talk about timeshares, let's talk about that terminology. So I think we all know timeshares, like, okay, we know what that is, but then there are sort of different ways of packaging timeshare. So now you may not hear timeshares, you may hear, oh, vacation club. Oh, vacation club sounds fun. It's a timeshare. So vacation ownership, another language that's used, fractional ownership, which can be fixed weeks or fixed percentages, floating weeks, sort of within that, I guess, pool. And then additional, that sort of are points. So that's more for sort of exchanging. So you're still within the system. You're still sort of paying to get into the system for a certain number of points, but rather than it being generally very site specific, it can be for all of Wyndham's vacation clubs, globally or whatever, however those transfers work. So my only point there is that a lot of times when we're saying timeshares, we just want to be careful on the language. Also relative to the language, which gets weird to me, is there are certain ones that are actually deeds. So a certain number of these where you would say, no, you literally own personally 1/52nd interest, sort of divided interest in that property. So I legally own 1/52nd, and I've got 51 partners that I probably don't know who they are, but there are 51 partners. Well, wait, I'm going to get super frisky, and I want to buy 3 of those or 4 of those weeks. Okay, now I own roughly 1/12 of, 1 month, 1/12 of the deed. That is not super common, but it is out there. So you'll see timeshare, deed timeshare. That's very different. Most of the timeshares are what are called fractional ownership contracts. So you don't own the deed. You pay money, in essence, for the use of. So you have a contract, kind of like a lease agreement almost, but like a contract to say, if I pay you $24,000, I want to be able to have the use of that particular unit or a unit within the family, within the portfolio of sites, to be able to use that. So subtle, but not subtle. I mean, in terms of the differences are major. So you're either on the deed or you're not on the deed. You're actually purchasing fractional ownership contract. You're never going to appear on the deed. Interestingly, maybe only to me, and that is in the US, these are perpetual, super fun word to say, especially when you say perpetuity, perpetual, fun to say. The point is perpetual. So what does perpetual mean? Perpetual literally is defined as until the end of time as we know it, and no human continues to inhabit our planet, or perhaps other planets, I do not know, forever. And you're like, okay, oh, that's good. That's good. So if I make a $24,000 on average purchase, good. I get to own this forever. Well, here's where that gets funky. Now we're taking these through estates, are we not? So when this is going through estates, you can't just say, yeah, I kind of don't want to use it anymore. All good. You guys just sort of take it back. That's one of the exit strategies we're going to discuss. But if they don't do that, which many don't, then now it becomes an estate asset. And now we'll make up, you've got 4 kids. Child number 1 might be designated as the person, and that person might say, I don't really want that. I don't want the annual fees. I don't want to go to, Orlando, whatever. And so I have to do a qualified disclaimer within 9 months of date of death to be able to disclaim that. Well, that sounds like, okay, that's not that big of a deal. Well, now where does it go? To the 2nd child, to the 3rd child, to the 4th child. Oh, now you're finished that. No. Now it's going basically through the full family distribution of an asset that needs to come out of the estate. You can see all of the issues that that creates. And people are hearing more and more about these estate issues. And therefore, they're trying to say, let's try to exit these during life. And now who gets the phone calls? The advisors on the call today are then saying, I don't know, maybe a charity will take it. And then the charities start getting all these calls. That is the point of this webinar. I also found interesting, Spain is 50 years. So it's like you own this for 50 years, 51st year, you don't own it anymore. People are like, oh, good. The other one is Australia at 80 years. In a weird way, a lot of that seemed to have been more consumer-based, saying, no, we don't want this to be perpetual. 50 years is plenty. So it's interesting. It's not where necessarily the industry has sort of pushed for that. It's more consumer saying we don't want this to be perpetual. We find this, by the way, a little bit esoteric here, but a lot of times with land in Mexico that's owned by a land trust. So there's tend to be sort of 99-year maximum ownership. So we might get, which we have before, received a piece of real estate in Mexico through Deca My Foundation as an example, but that is subject to the land trust. And maybe that term, when they purchased it, had 99 years. Now it maybe has 19 years. And so now if we were to sell that, what you're really selling is, in essence, the asset for 19 years. 20th year, they don't own it anymore. So it's somewhat of the same concept. So I've seen a couple Q&A pop up. We'll sort of see here. Do you anticipate any Airbnb style accommodations supplanting timeshare ownership for current and next generation families? I think that's sort of already happening. Although, that's a great point. You think, okay, look, whatever, 20 years ago, you didn't have the VRBO, you didn't have the Airbnb, you didn't have this sort of sharing economy relative to vacation spots. And I'm not an expert in this area at all, so I should shut up. But you think, oh, okay, that's tons and tons of new supply for vacation property. My wife and I actually do home exchanges as an example. And so, sort of swap houses deal. It's worked out great so far. Nothing's burnt down. The point is that timeshares used to sort of have a monopoly in that particular area. So you would think that amount of supply, which is a ton, coming online over the last 10, 15 years in particular, would then reduce demand. Great point. And then I come back here, it's like it's growing at 6%. 6%, that is robust. That is very robust type growth. So I don't think it may be, certainly, obviously, this might be, I'm making it up, 10% growth without that other supply, but it's still growing really fast. So great point, but don't want to get trapped in the black hole. People keep purchasing again, 6%, $8 billion purchased. That's 1 year. That's 1 year, $8 billion purchased. So who knows? If you legally own a fractional deed, do you know what sort of liability that entails, like for accidents on property or foreclosures? I do not. I do know that certainly it's almost like kind of like a giant HOA. So this is happening more and more relative to assessment. So a lot of these obviously are maybe coastal property, whacked by a hurricane, then all of a sudden insurance is going up, obviously repairs, other types of issues. And then so there are certainly assessments that can also take place as well. So that's usually the liability. It's not liability for sort of accidents per se, but if in essence, the HOA, the timeshare management company, is sued, and that's respective, this is a guess here, of all of the different owners, that sort of builds in as part of the assessment, because really they're saying, oh, we don't really technically own this. We're managing it on your behalf, just like if you owned let's say a piece of real estate with your brother, and your brother's like, hey, look, we got to pay $5,000 for something. Somebody came on the property and sued us, or who knows what. So here's where you send, if you own it 50-50, here's where you send your $2,500 check to me, and I put my $2,500 check, and then we pay off whatever this expense is. They work in a very similar way. I don't think that the fractional deed component versus the fractional ownership component really has any difference whatsoever in terms of liability, foreclosure, anything else. So if it's foreclosed and you own a fractional ownership, you're sort of losing that anyway, unless everybody does a giant capital call. That's my expectation. So great question, but I don't think it really, from a practical sense, matters that much. But from a legal sense, clearly that's very different. And I do think too, by the way, it's a little bit easier, all things being equal, to have the fractional ownership piece, because as soon as you're talking about deeds, you're talking about sort of a different level of closing, transfer of ownership at the sort of county level. It's more of a more robust process, I guess I would say. So in any event, great questions. Yeah, keep those coming. So let's go into the challenges. Challenges. You already know about all the challenges, but I'll sort of layer back the onion here a little bit. First, due diligence. And let me do this. I think I've got a poll set up. I'm curious here of the attendees. We got timeshare activity. I'm just curious about how many people here. I've sort of launched this poll. Have you ever helped your client give a timeshare or received a timeshare when working for a charity? And so if you could just maybe just put this on here, I will tell you how many did it for last week, or not last week, on Tuesday. Wow, a whole lot more here already than did it on Tuesday, so that's interesting. Wow, it's really coming up. That's good. Okay. Good. Well, I appreciate that. This is actually very helpful and very different than Tuesday. Let me give like 2 more seconds. 1, 2. Okay, there, close. All right, so this is 6 people on here have received one. 22, all these people that responded. We only had one out of about 80 that received one on Tuesday. So that's interesting. So I'm extra curious as I make my not so complimentary comments about timeshares, if one of the 6, like, well, actually it worked out pretty well for us. So well, I will look forward to hearing that, especially again if there's a clever way. So due diligence. So due diligence is not a small process. It gets back to sort of the question that was asked before about, are there assessments coming? How liquid might this be? These are not, I'm relatively good with this stuff. My Foundation's doing more real estate gifts than any other charity nationally. We do a lot of real estate. This is confusing. This is like really, this is points, or you've got to do this but to be able to get an exchange, and you upgrade for that, and this has to be within our system. It's almost like health insurance. It's like PPO and HMO and, oh my God. So these are not like a 3-minute process to review. Then if you say, okay, yeah, we'll take it. Now you have transfer fees, and those transfer fees tend to be around $2,000 to $3,000. Some might be a little bit less, but everything I see is about $2,000 to $3,000. That's separate from annual maintenance. That's just like, I want to somehow get rid of this, and there has to sort of be a closing to get rid of it. It's almost like the dock prep fee at the car lot. It's like, how is that $495? I mean, so I get there are a lot of documents, but you get the point. There are just a lot of disclosures and just general legal documents that have to be completed. The time and process to sort of do it as well. I tell everyone, this is true, if you're new to development and you're under 30, you have to have those 2 things. You're new to development and you're under 30. The first timeshare that comes up, you take it. The first one, you take that timeshare. People are like, why would you do that? I'll tell you exactly why. A, you have energy. You're still young enough to have energy. If you have kids, don't take it because that won't work. We won't have any energy. But if you have any kind of energy, you take it immediately. 2, you will take that timeshare. This is not a joke. You'll spend 10 to 15 hours a week for the next 4 months of your life. 10 to 15 hours a week, 4 months. And you're going to get $341.17. That will be the check. And timeshare owners, I kind of love them, but I kind of don't. They want to tell you everything about their stupid timeshare. Oh, it's floating red week number 9. I don't care. It's in Hawaii. I don't care. It's got 4 bedrooms. I don't care. You get the points in this. I don't care. Whatever goes in the top part of that funnel, you will get $341.17 when you sell. I don't care what goes on the top. $341.17. That's what you're going to get. So why do I encourage people to do it? Because this is a development career, a professional rite of passage. Everyone under 30 should be able to do 1 timeshare. And then, at the bars, at the conference, you can tell the timeshare story. You notch your belt. You're like, I did it. I'm in the club. If you don't do it, kind of true, you're late 30s, you're in development, timeshare comes up, people are going, oh my God, they're horrible. You'll get, oh no, they can't be that bad. They're worse. However bad you think they are, they're twice as bad. But you don't know that because you're older and you think, oh, it can't be that bad. So you got to take them early when you're young. You take all your bruises, you break your arm, you do all this stuff. You get $341.17, and then you never take another one. Kind of more true than not. The juice isn't worth the squeeze. When we talk about any kind, think about this, any kind of charitable giving, what is the holy grail? The holy grail of all charitable giving in terms of tax optimization is the asset that the donor owns or the client owns that has the lowest adjusted tax basis, that has appreciated the most. That is long-term capital gain. You buy Amazon stock for a nickel, it's now worth $1,000 a share. Oh, ding, ding, ding. Holy grail, give that. Real estate, for most commercial or investment real estate that you can depreciate, you're depreciating your cost or tax basis until some point in the future it becomes zero for the depreciable portion. For business interest, private business interest, my joke, because it's true, those are always like 87 cents a share. It's always 87 cents a share is the cost basis. And now it's grown like crazy. And they're going IPO, they're selling it through a merger acquisition, they're selling through a financing round. They're going, oh my God, it's all gain. If they're charitably inclined, give that. Why am I taking so long on this point? No timeshare in the history of the world, and I'll be so bold to say never, all caps, all bold, and underlined, in the future will ever appreciate in value. Ever. You think it's bad when you buy a car and you drive it off the lot and you lose 10%? You buy a timeshare, you use it 1 year or not at all, you've lost probably 70%. I mean, the second you sign it, 70%, and I'll show you why in a moment too. The point is there's zero capital gains taxes. So there's zero capital gains taxes. This is a horrible charitable gift anyway. So why would they give it to you? Because maybe some of you think this, that charities have, they think that charities have a magic wand, or we have a secret spell, or we have some kind of pixie dust poultice that we can sprinkle on stuff or point the wand or say the spell to poof horrible things into cash. I swear to God, people think that. I have literally had conversations with people that said, I've tried to sell my timeshare for 5 years. Nobody wants to buy it. I'm so sick of this. Here, will you take it? I'm like, well, what am I going to do? Now I'm trying to sell it for 5 years. I mean, it's kind of crazy. They think this is true, I guess, that all charities are like giant Wizard of Oz's, and we have this giant curtain, and we have all these billionaire donors right behind that curtain that can't wait to buy super horrible assets just to help out the charity. I think that's what they think. I don't know, but it's a weird logic jump because it's pretty linear here. You can't sell it, I can't sell it. There's no magic thing I can do. So the point in this is that's why charity or donors are reaching out, is because they think charities can sell it and they want to be done with it. They don't want to pay the annual maintenance fees. They don't want to pay the transfer fees, even if they were able to sell it or give it back. So all these, and the unknown assessments, which sort of came up before too. And then the charitable use during the holding period. Charity's not going to use it. 99% of the time, charity's not going to say, oh, we can't, we've got a staff member who's going to go to Vail. That creates a whole other set of issues, by the way. So the point is like, what is the charity doing with it other than paying the annual maintenance fees? So there's one sort of not so clever way that might work a little bit there, but in the whole scheme of things, usually doesn't work much at all. So these are the challenges. I'm sure there are more, but the main thing is the juice isn't worth the squeeze, and it is horrible from a tax perspective. And the charity will get $341.17. By the way, that has been my joke for like 15 years. And the data, which you'll see 2 slides from now, actually, you can't make it up. That's always been my joke. You will see that the eBay auction average price based on a DOJ sample was almost exactly that, which I think is kind of funny. I was doing it as a joke, but then it actually became real, which is kind of weird. All right, so we've got another Q&A thing in here. Can you discuss charity receives timeshare as an auction item? Ta-da! That's going to be the not so clever one. Excellent question. Will be on the next slide. So yes, auction item. That's the not so clever one. So we're going to talk about that. So what are the exit ramps? So it's the same, by the way, same ramp for charities and same ramp for donors. So no magic ramps again that charities have, same thing. If you transfer back to the timeshare group, it's kind of like, don't want to go off track too much, but kind of like a cemetery plot. It's easy to buy a cemetery plot, and then you're like, yeah, I don't think we're going to use it. Here, can you guys resell it? Oh, no, we don't resell it. We only sell new ones. Well, that's weird. You don't want to take this back. No, we don't want to take that one back. Okay, how about we just give it back to you? No, we don't want to take it back. In a lot of cases, they won't even take them if they're given back. That's kind of weird. So it's the same kind of thing. There's the timeshare marketing sort of developing group who was the original sale. It might be the existing management company that could have been the original group, or some new management company, or some new property. Wyndham took it over or whatever. And you could say, hey, Wyndham, I just want to give this to you. I don't want it perpetual. I don't want to use it anymore. I don't want my kids to have to mess with this through my estate. I've called 83 charities, and all 83, I hope, said they would not take it. So where do we send it? This is a lot more difficult than anybody thinks. In many cases, they have to get an exit firm, can't make that up, to do all the legal work. It's like negotiating in the middle. I mean, it is a negotiation, maybe nasty legal letters. Clearly, some property managers are better than others, but do not think it's like oh yeah, it's kind of like your rental car. We're not there after 5, but just drop the keys in the box. It'll be fine. There's no dropping the keys in the box. This is not an easy way off the lot, if you will. And so even if you can, like, oh, okay, yeah, we'll accept it. Ooh, but there's a $1,500 to $3,000 transfer fee for all of our documentation and process, and for us to sort of be willing to do it. Remember, the overall property was $24,000 new, average price. You're going to see pretty quickly here that many cases these are selling for $2,000, $3,000. So then this creates a weird spot, because the actual transfer fee in many, I'll say most cases are greater than what the future fair market value is of that property. Gets crazier. That's if you're lucky enough for them to say, sure, you can exit off the ramp, drop the keys in, give us $2,500 and move on. And a very large number of people would say, yes, we will do that in a second. Think about how weird that is. If they say no, then there are these exit firms. 99% are swarmy. That may be a little bit overstated, but probably not much. And then what they try to do is they try to basically say, we're going to get a lawyer or lawyer-esque-ish people involved here, and we know the nasty, language, or we know a bat channel to call, but we want $5,000 to $8,000. Average we found is $7,000 to do all of the work to get them to take it back. Can't make that up. So now you're paying basically an attorney type person to negotiate, to then force them to take it back. And then you typically have to pay a transfer fee on top of that. Not always, everyone's different, but you get the gist. Is it's a chunky fee to get out. So these are kind of like arrows. Arrows, I think, I would assume, don't feel good coming in, and they feel doubly bad coming out. So this is very similar, sort of a timeshare type model. Or what you do is you sell for a for sale by owner type site. So this is what we typically recommend. We say, don't give to charity, no charity. But timeshare owner, we get your spot. And so what we might suggest, we don't recommend, we would suggest that you try to find web platforms to be able to potentially sell it yourself. Now, you're still talking about a closing and potentially a transfer fee, but you sort of get out of this sort of component in the middle. So one group, not recommending them, is Timeshare Users Group. That's usually where we say that's at least one option. Weirdly, their national office is like 4 miles from my house, which is kind of weird. But they've been around since 1993, and they charge $15. And for $15, you can be an annual member and then post all your stuff. I want to quickly stop sharing and go over to show you what it looks like, because I think it's quite telling on a number of levels, actually. Let me see here. Open this one up. I have it available here. Yes. Home. Back to sharing. Let's see if it's happy. It is happy. All right. So you should see all of this now. So it's timeshare users group. And so what I found interesting were a couple things. One, it's really quite a horrible website. So it's really based on a 1993 sort of technology that they just keep adding to it, which is a little funky. But it includes all these resorts. So anybody that ever calls you, this is funny too. They used to have even a worse version of this, like back in the late 90s when I started referring donors over here to this. And it was almost so bad. It's like, is that even a continent? You could barely see it. It's like a sixth grader, like put the whole website together. It's kind of funny. But notice that this sort of goes to a clickable link. So these are timeshares in Europe, timeshares in Africa. Can't make that up. Timeshares in Australia, timeshares everywhere. So the point is this has a ton, I think like 5,000 or something, timeshares that are listed by owners. And this is one point I would do. One is you can do a search of any timeshare perhaps that you have. And so the point is that when donors call and they say, oh, I paid $24,000 for it. I think it's probably 15,000. Like, go on this site, do a search for that actual property. And they always say, almost always say, well, ours is kind of unique. Not unique. It'll be on here. And you'll be able to see, and it will be a whole lot less than what they think it is. So quick example, we'll go to Timeshare Marketplace. So we'll go here. I think this is the way that I go. All right. So they've done about 70 million that they've sold on here. So it's not they again. This is just a bulletin board. That's all this is. So 15 bucks, you post whatever you want. Not recommending them. What I find interesting is this one, free timeshares. I'm like, ooh, free timeshares. That sounds fun. Okay, let's click free timeshares. A couple things that are interesting. So one, there actually are free timeshares. Now there's an annual maintenance fee. So you see this in here, 2,700 bucks, 3,400 bucks, and so on. I found this also interesting when I looked at this. There's the Wyndham Bonnet Creek. So for those of you who went to the CGP conference, I think a couple times, it was at the Wyndham Bonnet Creek there in Orlando. So actually in a Plain Giving world, it was sort of there. And they're saying, oh, we'll give this away for free as long as you pay the roughly $800 in maintenance fees. Where I find this also interesting is just let's be silent for a moment and just watch this. This is my slider. So actually, I'll hit it down here. So here's my slider. This would probably take the rest of the time that we have. So now I'm going to grab the slider and go down super fast. And you can see all of the timeshares that people are trying to sell for free. Do not drink this wine, any wine, before going on this site. You think that's a joke? That's not a joke. You're going to drink 1 or 2 glasses of wine. I kid you not. You're going to go, oh, what's that timeshare thing? Timeshare users group. You're going to go on here. You're going to click through the free. You're going to find some in France. I kid you not. This is what you're going to do. You're going to look for your significant other. They're kind of far away. You're going, I don't know. This wine's pretty good. Oh, this wine's from France. And you're going to find one for free or like $7 in France. And then you're going to get real. I'm just telling you what you're going to do. You're going to add to cart. You're going to add that thing to cart. And then you're going to panic. You're going to like complete buyer's remorse. And they're going to say, but if we're already in France, Spain's kind of close. Add to cart. You're going to do it for Italy too. You're going to wake up the next morning if it's red wine. You're going to have a huge headache. You're going to own 4 timeshares. And you will have spent maybe 300 bucks. Kind of not a joke. So do not go on this website if you have any interest in acquiring timeshares, because most all of these were very, very expensive. I won't say 24,000, probably 15,000 that they're giving away now for free, subject to perpetual ownership, subject to maintenance fees, subject to potential assessments, and so on. You get the gist. So I will stop sharing here and go back. By the way, also, eBay auctions does a ton of these. So here we go. So that's Timeshare Users Group. Facebook Marketplace is doing more and more in the timeshare area, but eBay auctions in particular does a ton. So again, if a donor's trying to get rid of one, if a donor, this will sound weird, I'm not encouraging this, but if they said, no, I really want to go to Wyndham Bonnet Creek and I had such a good time at the CGP conference and I'd love to go there every week or be able to exchange it for different places, do not buy from the original source. You can go on these eBay auction, timeshare users group, or whatever. And if it's not free, it's going to be real close to free. Like all the other ones are like 500 bucks or $1,000. I mean, they're just trying to get rid of them at that point. So there you go. Now auction stuff. Only have 2 slides left, so good on time. Not so clever timeshare solutions. Dump on charity. We talked about all that stuff. Keep in mind, if the donor is trying to take in a deduction, fair market value deduction, for over $5,000, which I don't know how you're going to get there. I just showed you about 200 ones for free. But over $5,000, that requires a qualified appraisal. Hence, 3 days ago, as I mentioned, the first time we've ever been asked to do a qualified appraisal on a timeshare, which we will not do. Doesn't make sense to me on a lot of levels, but you get the point. So not only can you just say, oh, we can dump it on a charity and have all the challenges that I mentioned, but oh, by the way, there's also an appraisal requirement if it's over deduction being claimed is over $5,000. Auction, dun, 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 dun. So that was the question about auction. And this is what a lot of people say is, oh, we know, give it to charity, they'll auction it. That's what they always think. So couple issues. If a charity, very important here to be clear, if the actual timeshare contract or deed is given to a charity, a full transfer of that interest, a full ownership gift, if you will, all those challenges that we just talked about are the same. There's the transfer tax. There's, I mean, all these, or transfer fee. All of the same challenges are there. None of that goes away. The only thing that the auction replaces is the timeshare users group or eBay auctions. That's all it's replacing. So all that other stuff is the same. Then you have sort of auction related valuation issues about what is the charity saying that it is worth. Can't be an appraisal. They can't take that as an appraisal, but that always gets funky, as we all know. And then it better sell. So now, like, oops, nobody showed up, or whatever happened. And now what do we do? So now we've got the annual maintenance fees and so on. And then even if it does sell, remember I said, again, this is pretty general, but that 1,500 to 2,500 or I'm not saying that's the most common transfer fee, but it's not $10. Now you've got that transfer fee from the donor to the charity, and now from the charity to the auction winner. So right out of the gate, you might be spending that might be $2,000, $3,000 total just in transfer process. Never mind the time and everything else taken to do all of these things. So it might be easily 3,000. You better be getting at least 3,000 with timeshare. That, let's be horrible, is only because there's not price transparency that same donor could have gone on timeshare users group or eBay auctions and purchased the same thing for maybe 500 bucks. So that all gets a little bit funky. What you can do, which I think can be slightly effective, is that the charity accept a use of. So I don't want to go to Wyndham Bonnet Creek anymore. I own it through the ownership or through the deed. And I love this charity. I'm not going to be able to use it this year. I already have to pay I think it was $800, roughly $800 annual maintenance. So I'm going to give this to charity for their auction that's coming up. And then the charity does all the razzle dazzle. They typically do the open bar to enhance the auction bids. You know the rest of that story. And now somebody bids $2,000 to go to Wyndham Bonnet Creek and enjoy the week. That $2,000 is given to the charity. The donor is not getting any deduction whatsoever for that. The donor, it's as if they're just allowing their friend, to go and stay in the property for a week. And then maybe in the donor sort of psychic reward side, he or she might be saying, yeah, but the charity got $2,000. I'm having to pay $800. That's kind of like I just made a gift of $1,200 to the charity. I would do that. I love the charity. That can potentially work. But how often do you do that? Do you do it every single year? Maybe. I don't know. But the donor still owns the timeshare. There's still the perpetual ownership. It's still going through the estate. They still have the same exit issues. So I think that is a possibility to do that. I'm not an expert in this area. Thank God I don't want to be. But that's at least sort of a possibility. And I've already talked about this sort of, oh, well, we'll leave a legacy. You can hear this. You see this actually in the timeshare. It's kind of comical. In the timeshare marketing pitches about leaving this legacy and this vacation, and whenever they come back to Orlando, they'll think of you. I'm like, I bet they will think of you. But it goes through all the disclaimer rules. So I'll just sort of pause there. I think there's maybe another question. let's see, if you haven't shut it down entirely, it might be interesting to do a qualified appraisal for that timeshare. Oh, only with a notch on my belt. And there you go. No, I'm not doing that. My belt is so notched. I am so scarred. I've done this 32 years. I need no more notches, but that's actually pretty clever. All right. So these are not so clever solutions, except for this potential one, but it's not really a full solution. I would give it like a second inning type solution. You still have to figure out an exit. And the final thing is there was a charity, and there are multiple ones of these, that specialize in taking in timeshares. And they kind of work like the Decamai Foundation, where they said, we're a charity. In this case, I should have switched this. I think it was Project Philanthropy, Inc. was the legal name of the charity, and they were doing a DBA as Donate for a Cause. So that should be switched. But during the late, let's say 2006 or 7, I think I was introduced to them. A number of our Decamai Charitable Solutions clients, sort of very, we'll say top 10 charities using them. A lot of these too, like the car charity groups, like, oh, there's these, weird charities that take all these, cars. They're not taking the cars. There's a separate charity doing that, or a separate, third-party group doing that. And then they basically just refer all the vehicles over. This was kind of the same thing for timeshares. Well, this got a little bit sideways. So it was a Montana-based attorney, James Tarpey, don't know James, 2016 injunction by the DOJ. The way the structure was, allegedly, according to the DOJ, although they sort of went full bore on this and have a number of settlement issues, but that the charity was operated by this attorney, but the attorney also had a separate for-profit, I think it was Resort Closings or something, that was actually doing all the transfer and closing paperwork. And James also, conveniently, was doing the qualified appraisals. If he didn't do it, his sister was doing it, Susan Tarpey. And if his sister wasn't doing it, they had a sort of back pocket appraiser that did all the other ones. So basically, these 3 appraisers did all of these. You know where this is going. First, let me back up. 2010 to 2013, that's 4 years. 10, 11, 12, 13, 4 years. This one charity did 7,600 timeshares. I think that's like 6 a day. A lot of timeshares. A lot of timeshares. So they had big charities referring massive flow of these timeshares. My challenge is there aren't any other charities that I know that exist doing this, which is maybe a good thing. The bad thing is these 7,600 people are now calling all these other random charities who then kind of call us like, oh, stop calling us stupid timeshares. That's why I'm doing this webinar, so we don't have to answer those calls anymore. I digress again. 7,600 timeshares. So the average appraisal that James did, James did, Susan did, or the other appraiser, you can see there, was $11,000. Like, okay, that may be kind of reasonable. 24,000 is the average amount, 11,000 average appraisal, kind of seems about right. Oops. Then his charity for this sample then sold those timeshares. You can see there, 383. I've been saying for 15 years, $341.17. Pretty close. Pretty close. I will take credit for that. I might unnotch something on my belt for that because that was pretty close. 383. The IRS and sort of DOJ said, that seems to be a pretty big spread. Seems like you might be inflating the appraisal more than what fair market value is so that the donors can get roughly a 40% tax deduction. So that's roughly a $4,000 tax savings, as if they sold it for $4,000, which they could never, ever, ever, ever do. Hey, this is working out great for donors because we were only able to get $383, which is 10% of what their tax savings were. There are a number of these types of I won't say scams, but I'll say scams, where you had like the syndicated conservation easements, almost identical. You had another group, Wellfont Group, I think out of Tampa or somewhere, that would do the same thing. We got this industrial property, we got this good appraiser, and that appraiser will do like a 2 times or a 3x appraisal. So then even if we sell it for a lot less, you're getting a deduction that's creating a tax savings more than what you would have received in the open market from selling it anyway. Isn't this a great deal? And the IRS said, that sure seems like tax fraud. And then they shut down everybody in the DOJ and the SEC and everybody gets involved. I'm not saying all that happened here, but it kind of happened here too. So multiple appeals. He's an attorney, multiple appeals. Court required him to pay $8.5 million in restitution. I don't know where all that stuff is. And I'm not calling specifically American Cancer Society out. A bunch of different charities were using them. Like you don't get 7,600 from one charity, but their largest grants, they were actually making charitable grants, was $66,000 to American Cancer Society. So if you divide the 66,000 by 383, that's a ton of timeshares that were coming in. Again, not calling them out specifically in that way, but just that very large charities were having a lot of this timeshare flow, and they actually were getting some money back. The problem was all this other stuff in the middle of the sausage making, not so legal, sort of through that process. Ta-da. So I have finished. So I think no one on this call will ever take in a timeshare, maybe potentially use it for the auction for the use of. And finally, this webinar will appear. We now have it all migrated over to a YouTube channel because we were filling up our memory on our website. But these are all of the ones, again, donating commercial real estate, the one that I mentioned that my partner Ryan Raffin did last month. Here are all the ones back to 2022. We started this in the middle of COVID, I think June 2020. Thought we'd do it for 3 or 4 months and stop, and now we've done 45 of them. So I do hope that this is helpful. This question comes up a lot, certainly for us. I know it comes up more and more for advisors. It's going to come up more and more given the graying and aging of the baby boomers. It's coming up more and more with charities. And I hope more than anything else, this at least gives you some of the ideas, primarily these, to be able to help donors exit without necessarily being involved with that process, and to be able to empathize with them going, we get it, kind of in a spot. Here's at least the best information I have, which isn't perfect, but at least to be able to say if they can potentially sell it and then they can send their favorite charity $384 themselves, then that is usually the best path to go, all things being equal. So with that, I wish you the great rest of your week. I do hope this is helpful, at least in some ways. And now I get to post this, and I don't have to answer the question 2 to 3 times a week. Now I can send them to the webinar. So thank everybody very much, and again, I hope it's helpful. Have a great day.